By now, you've probably heard that Philadelphia Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts and Philadelphia Eagles offensive coordinator Brian Johnson have a long-standing friendship that dates back to the time that Brian Johnson was a high school athlete himself in the state of Texas. Essentially, the origins of the story is that at some point during Brian Johnson's time as a quarterback in the state of Texas, he came under the tutelage of Jalen Hurts, the father of Jalen Hurts. So basically, Jalen Hurts and Brian Johnson have known each other since Jalen Hurts was just a little child. However, I want to go back and I want to revisit Brian Johnson's time as a high school athlete, his transition into college football, the coaching tree from which he has been, brought out of, and how that may or may not impact the Philadelphia Eagles install their offense, their game plans, and the play calling as the offensive coordinator here. All right, y'all. Without further ado, let's jump into this origin story of Brian Johnson as a high school athlete. What's up, Cerebral football fans? My name is Steven Hyder. This is Gate City Sports Channel. Brian Johnson comes out of Goose Creek in Consolidated Independent School District in the state of Texas as a first-team all-district player and that district's most valuable player. As a matter of fact, in the state of Texas, he would go on to receive the accolade of being second-team all-state, which made him fairly coveted as a recruit because, Texas is kind of one of the bigger, recruiting grounds for college programs. So as this young man came up for his opportunity to choose schools, he had the likes of programs such as Illinois, Louisiana Tech, and Utah, all coveting him to be their next quarterback. He would go on to choose the University of Utah, the Utah Utes, and he would spend his freshman season actually backing up Heisman finalist Alex Smith. By the time that this young man completed his career at the University of Utah, he would so entrench himself into the story of the underdog in the spoiler role that he will become this university's all-time leader in wins. In his senior season, he would go on to beat a Rich Rodriguez-led Michigan program, the 12th ranked TCU program, and a 14th ranked BYU program. But the cherry on top happened in the Sugar Bowl, when previously undefeated number 1 overall Alabama was upset in the SEC title game by Florida and ended up playing a little unknown quarterback by the name of Brian Johnson in the Utah Utes inside the Sugar Bowl as the 4th ranked team, to where Brian Johnson led his team to victory against Alabama. So in his senior year, he had beat Rich Rodriguez at Michigan. He had beat a top 15 program in TCU and a top 15 program in BYU, and then turned around and beat a top 5 program in Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. When I look at this and you see this young man right from the jump, he's hard to not like because this guy kind of fits the culture of Philadelphia. He fits that underdog role. He fits that role of let me spoil things for you. On the topic of upsets and underdogs and the structures of offense, getting into specifics about Brian Johnson, if you will, guys. This is all kind of bred and it's born out of this air raid spread offensive concepts that were really and honestly engineered for teams who maybe couldn't recruit at the same level that your blue blood programs could, right? Your Alabamas, your Oklahomas, and those schools, Florida States per se. However, they could still find athletes, and if you had a good enough coaching staff and a quarterback who was quick and smart enough to read a defense, you could take advantage of the spacing on the field and you could potentially create some upsets. Now, this is really laid into the idea of what is a pro system and then what is pretty much considered to be a spread system. And to be honest with you, things have kind of merged and things have blended over time. But traditionally speaking, when people mentioned a pro system, you were talking about multiple tight end usages. You were talking about traditional 21, 22 personnel where you have 2 back sets going on, right? Quarterbacks under center. That used to be what we would consider to be the pro style offenses. I will say that things have changed a little bit. You will see some shotgun usage in pro systems nowadays, but that's what it used to mean. And then on the other side of things, when you would think back in the day about spread systems, you were thinking 10 personnel, 4, 5 receiver sets, right? Pulling a tight end off the field, potentially pulling a running back off the field, going empty back set with a running back split out and lined up, right? Doing things that spread the field out. Then there was the new adaptation that you have to know to understand the system here, guys, which is what happened in the mid-2000s, right? You have to look at the West Virginia example, which is Rich Rodriguez and Pat White, and what they were able to do there. Then you have to look at the Florida example, which was Dan Mullen and Tim Tebow. and what they were able to do there. And then one more example that often gets overlooked is Andy Ludwig and Brian Johnson at Utah and what they were able to accomplish there. And this is where we start to see spread concepts and maybe even some mixing and mashing with spread mixed in with some of the pro concepts. But nonetheless, the wrinkle is now your quarterback is becoming an active participant to the run game. You are adding in the RPO stuff. You are adding in the zone read stuff. You're adding in the option-based offenses out of a shotgun type system. That's where you have to understand the origins of this story, and that's the first thing I will start with when we start to analyze the nuts and the bolts, right? The real, details of Brian Johnson's system. And to be honest with you, this system is found in Philadelphia. Nick Sirianni ran it, even going back to Alabama and Jeff Stoutland's days. Jeff Stoutland as being one of the run game coordinators. This is something that's a staple in his offense. This is something that many of you guys who have played collegiately, whether it's D2, D3 ball, or FBS or FCS level, everyone knows this, even high-level high school. You know these concepts I'm about to talk about, which is really and honestly, if you want to know this system, if you want to know what to look for in the preseason, because I guarantee you will see this. It's knowing the 14-15 zone read. 14-15 zone read, you must know it because it is a staple of what this offense will be. And I'm going to give you the quick cliff notes of this, guys. It's inside zone to where the running back is going to play side. He's going to go off the outside foot of the guard on the play side, right? And the quarterback is reading the backside, either the end man on the line of scrimmage, or he's reading the 5 technique on the backside. If that backside defensive end crashes down towards the play side, then he's going to pull the ball back out and he's going to run with it, right? If that defensive end stays contained, he's going to hand the ball off to the running back. The running back's going to go. This is simple, man. This is Dan Mullen, who is very much a staple and one of the guys who taught not only Tim Tebow and stuff, but remember, Dan Mullen was the head coach when Brian Johnson was the offensive coordinator at Florida. So Dan Mullen worked with Tim Tebow back in the day. So there was some structure here. And Dan Mullen really did believe that the game starts with the run game. Everything starts by manipulating the box, getting +1 in the run game. And then when teams overcommit to stopping your run, right? When they start bringing 7, 8 guys in the box to stop what you're doing, when they start bringing that pressure, that's when you eat a team up, right? That's when the RPO stuff starts to eat teams up through the pass game. Same thing can be said for what was going on with, Andy Ludwig and what happened down there with Brian Johnson in Utah and the way he operated that offense, Brian Johnson being the actual quarterback there. And the same thing can be said with Pat White, West Virginia, although I would say Rich Rodriguez, a little bit more deeper into like kind of the option-based stuff, the zone read stuff with this quarterback. Nonetheless, all these guys did the same thing, and that is going to be a staple of this offense. If you want to know specifics of this offense, 14-15 zone read, I promise you, they may call it something different inside of the league. It's the same thing we all learned, though. If you played upper-level football in high school, if you played D2, D3 ball in college, if you played FCS or FBS level in college, you know what I'm talking about. You know what a 15-15 zone read is. At this point, I'm sure a few of you guys are kind of like, Gabe, this is really not the answer I was hoping you'd give us about Brian Johnson and the scheme of the offense. This is what I'll say, all right? Think about it this way. What does Nick Sirianni do best? What does Kevin Patullo do best? What does Jeff Stoutland do best? What does Singleton, our running back coach, what does he do best, right? What does Brian Johnson do best? And what does our quarterback in this team do best, right? They are really difficult to defend on this RPO stuff. And I know, I'm telling you straightforward, we're going to be an RPO-based offense. A lot of these systems inside of the NFL now have kind of really fully developed into that, to be quite honest. With that said, it doesn't mean there cannot be subtle manipulations that take your mind away from some things. Like, number one, the simple fact that Jalen Hurts is so successful in getting down without getting a lot of contact. I mean, yeah, he got beat up a little bit in that Chicago game, no doubt about it. He missed a couple of games as a result of that. With that said, I mean, he's fairly good at getting out of bounds and getting down and sliding before, contact is made on him. What that does is that frustrates defenses, and what they will probably do in return is they will probably start really stacking the box, thus kind of forcing the issue in terms of RPOs really just becoming glorified play-action passes to where you're going to try to hold them and make them be honest just in case if you start noticing that they're not being honest to it. And then you're going to do stuff off of that RPO, which is basically a glorified play-action, out to your receivers or your backs in the receiving game. So with that said, I mean, I kind of look at it like this. Like, that's one aspect. The second aspect is what can you do off of that? And this is where I think Brian Johnson could bring the subtleties, right? Which is to make you think you're getting 14-15 zone read, right? I mean, look at a play like the one I showed you with Kadarius Toney, right? Where Kadarius Toney kind of motioned into the backfield, and you saw it was kind of a 14-15 zone read play, where Trask was still reading the edge defender out there, and then the roles were reversed, right? Trask is reading it because he's supposed to take the ball depending on what happens. If that guy flattens out and plays, Toney, then Trask should pull it down and take off running with it. If he crashes down, then Trask is supposed to give the ball off to Toney. But that's an adaptation off of that, right? But there's also things that you can do, right? You can make it look like you're going to do that, and you can hit those, other plays off of that, right? You can motion and move, and it's things I see from that offense with Brian Johnson. I saw a lot of orbital motion. I saw a ton of, return motion. I saw over motions. I saw jet motion. There was a lot more movement out of his offenses compared to what I saw from Nick Sirianni. Sometimes Nick can be a little bit of my guys are better than your guys, and good enough players I don't need to design a lot of offense for. I just need to have solid fundamentals inside my playbook, solid fundamentals inside of the install of my offense, and we should be able to beat you just by out-scheming you that way. Hopefully Andy Reid taught him a lesson. Sometimes it's good to scheme guys. Sometimes that you can outperform yourself and you can beat an opponent just by scheming your guys to a ridiculous level, and that's what Andy did in the Super Bowl. He willed his way through scheme and solid quarterback play and manipulations through the run game to basically get the result that he got in the Super Bowl. So hopefully Nick learns a lesson there. I do think he's got a guy in Brian Johnson who could bring that style of offense here to where there would be more shifts, more motion, a little bit more deception, right? A little bit more scheming guys, a little bit more of creating offense for guys. All right, that's what I got for y'all. Let me know what you think. It's going to be tough to judge some of this stuff in preseason, guys, because it's going to be vanilla. That's why I'm telling you, look for the 14-15 zone read. You're going to see that. I can guarantee you that, right? I saw a lot of stuff to the backs. Look at the utilization to the running backs, man. They played a lot of wheel routes, threw a lot of wheel routes out to the running backs inside of that system I was watching at Florida. And Brian's an interesting guy because there were times where he was heavily utilizing tight ends. Early on at Utah, he utilized his tight ends quite a bit because he had a good, tight end there. And then late at Florida with Kyle Pitts there, he utilized his tight end. But then there was these durations of time where he didn't have solid tight end plays, so he didn't use them, right? There were times where he was heavy throwing the ball to the running backs. There was also durations of time where he didn't have receiving backs, so he didn't do that. So I think we're going to see a lot of stuff going to DeAndre Swift and Kenneth Gainwell and those type of guys, but we'll have to see, right? I think Oz is a guy you should watch in space. I think if they get Britton Covey on the field more than they got him on the field last year, he's a guy that has a little bit more lateral movement ability to him to space out teams. DeAndre Swift and Kenneth Gainwell, those type of guys that can laterally space you. To where Quez is more of that vertical spacing. I don't think Quez has the same agility going laterally as he does that top end speed going vertically. But those other guys do have those traits. All right, y'all, leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think. I appreciate y'all watching, and I'll see y'all on the next video.